Society has collapsed and you find yourself 1 week into an SHTF situation. Here's my 5 steps I take next.
It's been 1 week since society collapsed. Panic and desperation is everywhere, and any hope of normal life returning is fading fast. Survival isn't about waiting for help to arrive, it's about adapting. Are you prepared for what comes next, and have you got what it takes to survive?
Hello, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for taking the time out to click on the video and checking the channel out. Yes, so another video today on what steps you would take if you find yourselves in a total SHTF situation. Yes, it could be a grid down, it could be cyber attack, it could be total all-out war. What would you do? What steps would you take if you find yourself in that sort of situation? Now, you might have already seen the video I done on 24 hours, first 24 hours in this sort of situation, and 72 hours in. So this video is going to be what steps I take if I find myself 1 week into that scenario. But before we get into the video, if you are new to the channel and you haven't subscribed yet, please think about liking the videos and subscribing to the channel. Hit the notification bell. Helps spread the word, helps the channel grow. And if you do hit the notification bell, you will get notified any new content that comes your way. Yes, we find ourselves 1 week into this, total shitstorm of a scenario.
The world has gone to hell.
Right, it could be a number of different things what's happened, but there's no electric, the grid's down, there's no internet, there's no communications from the government, there's basically no law and order, and as I say, it's a total SHTF situation. I say that a lot today. So just to recap then from the other videos, the first 24 hours we had 6 steps I'd take there, and that was an acronym called that step. So that was assessing a situation, then it was taking action, your first initial actions you take, actions on maybe. Then it was securing your home. Then it was taking stock of your supplies, the equipment you got. Then it was establishing communications, with your friends, family, close neighbours. And then it was making plans, preparing some sort of plans for any future developments you're going to take. Then after that, 72 hours in, we had securing more water. Your initial supplies may have dried up. We had security and patrolling your local area, your neighbourhood. Then we had seeking more supplies safely. Then we had sanitation and waste management. And then lastly, we had preparing to bug out. That was our 5 steps, when you find yourselves 3 days into a serious situation. So now we find ourselves 1 week in. What are our next 5 stages I would take? And again, I'd just like to say that these are my steps, the things I do. What you do could be completely different. Yeah, so if you have got any suggestions or differences, please feel free to put them in the comments below. I'm always interested to see what you want to say about that. Right, so 1 week into SHTF, not a lot has moved on, for the first, say, 1, 2, 3 days initially, but the reality is setting in, isn't it? After 1 week, especially if there's no word from a government or just an emergency broadcast, things are getting really serious. And with that, people are starting to, get really desperate. They're going to start panicking. They're going to already, decimated the high streets. They've looted all the shops they possibly can. Now, the initial supplies may have started to run dry, or they're thinking, right, long term, we're really going to be in trouble here. So what are we going to do next? So the situation, I suppose, hasn't increased dramatically for the first 3 days, but reality is setting in, and mentally is a whole different ball game, isn't it? To coin an American phrase. So yeah, 1 week in, the situation is desperate. So what would I do? What would be next? Well, the first step would be beefing up my security at home. So as I said, the situation is getting desperate. People are getting more and more desperate as well to find resources and supplies, especially in urban areas. We've got a lot of people in urban areas. There's only a finite amount of resources, so they're going to come knocking, aren't they? They're going to come searching for food, supplies, water, whatever it is. So beefing up your home security was my next step. After that first initial 3 days, bit of a honeymoon period, I suppose, especially if you're prepared. But now things are getting real, aren't they? So now you want to really look into securing your home and perhaps putting certain deterrents in place. What sort of deterrents? Well, I'll leave that up to your imagination. But it could be motion detectors, motion lights. If you haven't got power, you can get obviously battery power. You could perhaps board up your windows and doors a bit more. You can beef up your locks. You could put extra security measures on the inside of your windows and doors. You could go to an extreme of setting up some sort of trip alarm systems all around your house. It depends on obviously where you live, what sort of neighborhood you're in, what sort of country you're in as well, what the measures you're allowed to take. I'm not going into what self-defense measures you can take or equipment you could use on YouTube, but be free to use your imagination on what obviously I'm talking about, some sort of self-defense measures. Now, if people were banging at the door and they're looking to get in, perhaps think about having some sort of safe room. You might be lucky enough to have a cellar or a basement or a safe room, or if not, just some sort of secure room, perhaps in the middle of the house, away from any windows and doors, where you could barricade yourself, that last line of defense. Obviously, if that's impossible, then bug out, isn't it? So that'd be my first step, is beefing up my home security. So number 2 would be rationing my food supplies. Now, 1 week in, nothing's happened, no help coming. There's nothing on the grapevine that there's the government taking control again, or whatever it is. So you're thinking, right, long term now, how long is this going to last? So you've got X amount of food at home. You could have 1 week supply, you could have 2 week supply, you could have 6 months to 12 months supply. Who knows, isn't it? But I'll be taking stock. I'll be making an inventory of what I've got, and then rationing that food or that calories per day. I'll be making meal plans. So I'll take the food I've got, I'll divide it into meal plans and then use that. It's no good going willy-nilly, off the cuff and just, right, I'll just take that, I'll take that, because you're going to make sure this food lasts. Hopefully, any day now, the world's going to go back to normal, isn't it? But if you're thinking long-term, you're going to think, right, I need to make this food what I got last. And also, doing that, it will give you an idea of, say, what shortages you got and what you're going to need to get if you are going to get supplies. So yeah, make a list, formulate meal plans, and ration your food accordingly. Now, I'm not saying ration it like, starving each other, whatever, but like I say, having set meal plans will help you gauge how long your food is going to last, right? And also, while we're on about subject of food, and a little bit about the previous step of securing your home or beefing up your home security, is perhaps think about hiding some of your food supplies, having a cache somewhere, get yourself a plastic barrel, dig it in the garden, hide it in the shed. I know some people have built false walls. So if that was such a case where people were ransacking houses or they're coming in, hide some of your food supplies. Now, again, I know it's not possible for everyone, if you're living in blocks of flats or whatever, but just do your best if you can to hide your supplies. Not all of them. I'm not saying you can have to hide everything behind the bloody kitchen worktop, whatever it is, or underneath the sink. Then again, if the worst case scenario, like I say, someone comes in and they might nick a few items, whatever it is, or you might even give them, just to say, look, get on your way. At least it's not going to nick everything, or you're not going to lose everything. So there we are. So number 2 was rationing food supplies. Right, so number 3 is my medical supplies, is sorting out my medical supplies. Now, after the first few days, I'm likely going to have, some major issues, trauma, whatever it is, unless it's, warfare and, there's buildings collapsing and all that sort of stuff in it. But let's just say you're at home, grid's down or all that, right? And yeah, the likelihood of something seriously happening in the first few days is low, isn't it? But the longer it goes on, we're 1 week into it now, and the longer it goes on, you're thinking, right, there's more chance now of something actually happening, someone getting injured, someone getting ill. And you may have people in your family or your close group of friends who may have serious illnesses. You might have diabetes, you might have some sort of medications they need, and then medication is going to run out at a certain point, isn't it? So my next thing now would be looking at my medical supplies, seeing where I'm short, and seeing if I need to go out somewhere and get some, especially if it comes to, like I say, medications, right? You don't really want to go out, into the hordes, when there's chaos everywhere trying to get medications, but if there's someone who really needs it in your family, you will have to go and do it. So that was a relatively quick one, was it? But number 3 was looking at my long-term medical supplies. So number 4 on the list is fuel. Now, depending on where you are in the world, again, depending on what time of year it is, think about heating, cooking, boiling water. What sort of fuel are you using to do those things? Now, if you're in the middle of summer or you're in a hot climate, you haven't got to worry about heating so much. You might be able to get by with a few blankets and extra quilts, whatever it is. But if you're in a climate where winter's approaching, how are you going to heat your home? Again, cooking. You might have the initial gas canisters for your camping stove. They might have run out after a few days, depending on what sort of supplies you've got. So think about fuel for cooking, alternative ways of cooking. Could be in the garden, could be like a barbecue, rocket stove, all that sort of stuff. I've done videos on alternate ways of cooking before up there. I suppose another way of looking at it, 1 week in, the initial first stage is over. Now you're looking more long-term preps, aren't you? What can you do in the medium to long term, I should say, right? And fuel is part of that. Yeah, we need fuel, like I say, for numerous different things. So now's the time to get it in. So there we are, nearly at the end. So that was number 4. What we had so far, we've had beefing up your home security. Again, I'm not going to go into what measures you can possibly take, especially not on YouTube, but use your imagination. There's loads of different things you could have to protect yourselves in your home. We had sorting out your food rations, rationing your food. We've had making sure you got your medical supplies you need. And then number 4 was sourcing your fuel supplies. So number 5 on my list then of things I would do next if I found myself 1 week into a total SHTF situation, and that is situational awareness. Now you think, oh, that's a bit of a strange one, isn't it? It's not something you could collect, but it's something I think you'd have to learn pretty quick. You find yourself in this sort of situation where you have to go out and perhaps get more resources, more supplies. And it's a dangerous world out there. Like I said before and earlier in the video, people are getting dangerous now. They're panicked, they're getting desperate. When people are desperate, they'll do desperate things, especially when they've got families and kids to look after. So if you are going out in that sort of situation, looking for supplies, maybe it's your fuel, maybe it's your medical supplies, it's more water, or wherever it is, you've got to make sure you've got good situational awareness, right? Spotting potential dangers. I've done a video on this, it's up there somewhere, on what dangers to look out for if someone's going to, perhaps pose a threat. So, as I said, spotting potential dangers and avoiding potential dangers. Learn how to, maneuver yourself away from any potential dangers. It's no good being John Rambo out there, right? Because if your family, are at home and you're out there to try and protect them, get more equipment, you're no good to them dead, are you? Or injured. You're then a liability, and if you've injured yourself. So it's not just about spotting potential dangers, but making sure you're not in a potential dangerous situation. So in this sort of scenario, then I really consider learning more about situational awareness. Your life may depend on it if you find yourself 1 week into an SHTF situation. So that's it, guys. That's the video. That was my 5 steps of the next steps I would take if you find yourself 1 week into it. But as I said, 1 week into it, the first initial 7 days, not a lot changed in them 7 days. If you're well prepared, 7 days is not too much of a hindrance if you've got plenty of supplies. But after them 7 days, 1 week into it, you're thinking, right, it's getting real now, isn't it? In the future, and you may start to worry about how long my supply is going to last, and what sort of situation is going to find yourselves in. So again, talk about previous video when we touched on mental resilience, that also comes to play. That'll come to play in all these videos, won't it? Mental resilience. In the following videos, we're looking at more long-term preps you have to take, and more skills you might have to take on board. But we'll leave that, like I said, for future videos. But until then, this is the end of the video, and hope you liked it. Hope you can take something from it. Don't forget to leave a comment below if you've got any suggestions or anything I think I should add, into the videos. And if you haven't done so already, please think about liking and subscribing. Hit the notification bell. And if you do like the videos, check that one out and that one. And I'll catch you again next time. All the best.